Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into something I think is really fascinating.
Yeah.
Is this whole evolving media landscape and how it's really shaken up
It is.
the political scene. You know?
Oh.
It is.
Yeah.
You've given us a fascinating piece to work with.
Yeah.
This clip from Valuetainment featuring Eric Trump
Oh, yeah.
analyzing his father's appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience.
It's a good one.
It's really good.
It is.
And it really does, I think, get at the heart of
Yeah,
how figures like Rogan are changing the rules of the game.
it does.
Not just in media, but in politics as well.
Absolutely. And what's so interesting about this one is how it really gets at not just the shift to figures like Rogan,
Right.
but also the kind of perceived decline of the traditional news outlets like CNN
Yeah.
in the eyes of some.
Yeah.
We also see the rise of these alternative media platforms like podcast and their potential to actually impact
Right.
political discourse.
Yeah. And one of the first things that jumped out at me was Eric Trump emphasizing
Yeah.
Joe Rogan's just incredible reach.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, his podcast is
Massive.
It's the top show
It's huge.
in 94 countries on Spotify.
Yeah, that's not just big.
I mean, that's huge.
That's huge. Yeah. It highlights a really crucial shift
Right.
in how people are actually getting their information these days.
Yeah.
It's not just about those traditional gatekeepers anymore, you know? Independent voices like Rogan are reaching a global audience.
Yeah. And he doesn't hold back. He suggests that podcasts like Rogan's
Yeah.
and even his wife's
Yeah.
are making the CNNs irrelevant.
Making the CNMs irrelevant.
Do you think,
Strong words.
strong words,
Yeah.
do you think traditional media
Yeah.
is truly becoming irrelevant, or is that statement
Yeah.
more provocative than accurate?
Well, it's certainly a bold statement,
Yeah.
but I think it reflects a sentiment that we are seeing more and more.
Okay.
You know, certain audiences are feeling like those traditional outlets have lost touch with them.
Right.
And you know what's even more interesting
Yeah.
is this clip even points to a potential consequence of that shift.
Okay.
Political realignment.
Right.
Yeah.
He brings up some
Yeah.
interesting examples of people who have seemingly switched sides
Yeah.
politically, like former CNN anchor
Yeah. Chris Cuomo.
Chris Cuomo.
You know, his case is particularly intriguing because
Wow.
it makes you wonder if these shifts in the media landscape are actually influencing personal viewpoints and political affiliations.
He, after leaving CNN,
Yeah.
he's taken a more right-leaning stance on his new show.
Yeah.
At News Nation, he even had Donald Trump call into a town hall
No.
that he hosted.
I know.
I mean, that's pretty stark contrast
Yeah.
to his time at CNN.
It raises a lot of questions, I think,
Yeah.
about the pressures
Yeah.
and constraints of working
Yeah.
within different media environments,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Did his departure from CNN give him more freedom
Right.
to express views he maybe already held?
Now that's a question I bet a lot of people are asking,
A lot of people, yeah.
you know, and it makes you think
Yeah.
about how the media we consume might shape our own worldview, even our political leanings.
Exactly. And you know what?
Yeah.
We're seeing more and more
Yeah.
of these unexpected alignments popping up,
Right.
which really makes you stop and think,
Yeah.
you know, what role does the media play
Yeah.
in not just how we understand events,
Right.
but also in shaping our personal beliefs?
One of the most, I think, memorable moments in the clip
Yeah.
is when Eric Trump compares his father to Joe Rogan.
Oh, yeah.
He even calls Donald Trump the alpha
Yeah.
of the world.
It's so revealing.
It is.
That alpha comparison.
It is.
You know, it suggests that dominance and strength
Right.
are valued traits,
Yeah.
not just in politics, but also in the media landscape itself.
Yeah.
And he goes even further.
Yeah.
He actually lays out this whole hierarchy
He does.
of alphas,
Yeah.
you know, working his way up from
Yeah.
the city level all the way to the world stage.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think it speaks to this intensely competitive nature of both politics and media.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
individuals are constantly vying
They are.
for attention and influence.
They are.
You could argue that this alpha mentality
Yeah.
is driving a lot of the content that we consume these days.
Yeah. It makes you think about the personalities and the narratives that rise to the top in this kind of environment.
Right. What are we drawn to?
Yeah.
You know, what captures our attention?
Exactly. And what does that say
Right.
about the power dynamics at play,
Yeah.
both within media organizations and in the wider political landscape?
Right. And he emphasizes
Yeah.
that these alpha figures,
Yeah.
like his father and Joe Rogan,
Right.
they don't accept defeat. And they're always in that offensive mode.
They're always on the attack.
Right.
Is that what draws people to these personalities?
Yeah, I mean, is that
I think so.
it?
It's certainly a powerful image.
It is.
And it aligns with this assertion that there's a certain dirtiness to both politics and media.
Okay.
He even compares it to the dynamics
Interesting.
he's observed while interviewing figures from organized crime.
Wow. That's a surprising connection.
But it makes you think about the strategies and tactics that are often employed in these high-stakes arenas.
So it's not just about reporting the news or sharing information anymore. It seems like there's a sense that the pursuit of power and influence can involve a degree of ruthlessness.
Okay.
A willingness to play by a different set of rules.
That's a bit of a sobering thought.
It is.
And it brings us back to this idea of unexpected alignments.
Right. If we connect this back to Chris Cuomo, for example. Yeah.
It makes you wonder if his perceived shift to the right is less about conviction and more about survival.
Right.
In this new, more aggressive media landscape.
It's definitely something to consider, and it underscores the importance of being aware of the motivations and agendas of those who are shaping the information we consume.
Absolutely. We need to be savvy consumers of media and recognize that everyone has a perspective.
Yeah.
And that perspective is often shaped by their own experiences and goals.
It's easy to get swept up in the narratives that we're presented with, but taking a step back and considering the broader context is crucial.
Exactly. Who's telling the story? What's their angle? What might they be leaving out? These are all critical questions to ask ourselves as we navigate this complex media environment.
So if we bring all of this back to you, the listener, what does this deep dive reveal about this evolving media landscape?
Well, I think it shows us that the lines between news, entertainment, and opinion are becoming increasingly blurred. And that traditional gatekeepers information are facing challenges from independent voices and alternative platforms.
And he even suggests that figures like Chris Cuomo are only changing their tune because they've left traditional media and are now free to express their true opinions.
Interesting.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a thought-provoking statement, and it speaks to that broader issue of media bias and the potential influence of corporate structures on individual expression.
Are certain viewpoints suppressed or amplified? Depending on the media outlet.
Big questions.
And he also points out that figures like Bobby Kennedy Jr. And Tulsi Gabbard, who have publicly broken with their former parties, they've embraced these alternative platforms and seem to be finding receptive audiences there.
They are.
What do you make of that?
Well, it's true, and it suggests that there's a growing appetite for viewpoints that challenge the established narratives, regardless of which side of the political spectrum they come from.
So these alternative platforms are giving a voice to those who feel marginalized or unheard by the mainstream media.
Exactly, and that can have significant implications for political discourse and even electoral outcomes.
It's a reminder that the media landscape is constantly shifting.
Constantly.
And that these shifts can have profound effects on our society.
Absolutely. The way we consume information shapes our understanding of the world. And that understanding, in turn, influences our beliefs and actions.
It's a powerful cycle.
It is.
And it underscores, I think, the importance of being informed, engaged, and critically aware of the forces that shape our perception of reality. This has been a fascinating conversation so far.
We've only just begun to scratch the surface of this complex and fascinating topic.
And speaking of exploring, let's turn our attention to something else that he mentions. This sense of disillusionment with traditional institutions.
Yes, that's a key piece of this puzzle.
You
know, when you have figures like Joe Rogan commanding massive audiences. And those audiences are increasingly skeptical of mainstream narratives. It's bound to have some kind of ripple effect.
It's almost as if the trust is eroding.
Exactly. And it's not just about Rogan. There's a whole ecosystem of alternative media outlets and personalities who are catering to this growing sense of distrust and dissatisfaction.
So we're moving away from traditional structures.
It seems that.
And embracing something new.
It seems that way. And this leads us to the concept of a populist backlash and the rise of alternative media.
Let's dive into that in part 2.
You know what's fascinating here?
Yeah.
Eric Trump frames this whole shift away from traditional media as a rebellion against what he sees as the elitism and bias of those institutions.
It's like those who feel unheard are looking for alternatives.
Exactly. He argues that figures like his father and Rogan appeal to people who feel like the system isn't working for them.
Okay.
People whose voices haven't been heard.
So it's a populist backlash against the established gatekeepers of information and power.
Precisely. And this backlash isn't just about how people consume media.
Okay.
It's influencing political preferences and even voting patterns.
You're saying we're witnessing a realignment?
It seems that way.
Of the political landscape.
Traditional party affiliations are becoming less important.
Okay.
As new coalitions form around shared values and grievances.
So how did these alternative media platforms fit into all of this?
They're a major driving force in this realignment.
Okay.
They offer spaces for like-minded individuals to connect and reinforce each other's beliefs.
And this could be a good thing, right?
It can be.
Providing a platform for diverse voices.
It can be, but there's also a potential downside.
Okay.
You know, it can create echo chambers and filter bubbles where people are only exposed to information that confirms their existing biases.
That makes sense. It's like a feedback loop.
Exactly.
The more people consume alternative media, the more skeptical they become of mainstream narratives.
Exactly. And that can make it even harder to engage in constructive dialogue across different viewpoints.
So how can we break out of this cycle?
Well, that's where media literacy comes in.
Okay.
You know, we need to equip ourselves with the skills to critically evaluate information, sources recognize bias, and distinguish fact from opinion.
Those skills are essential in today's world.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially with the rise of misinformation and disinformation online.
Absolutely. It's not just about being passive consumers of information anymore. It's about becoming active participants.
Okay.
Questioning, analyzing, and synthesizing information from multiple sources to form our own informed opinions.
Eric Trump actually touches on this idea of shifting perspectives.
Yeah.
When he talks about how he used to know figures like Chris Cuomo, Don Lemon, and Mika Brzezinski.
Right.
Before his father entered politics.
Oh, that's interesting. What did he say about those relationships?
Well, he claims they were all very friendly with the Trump family until Donald Trump decided to run for president.
That's a really interesting anecdote.
Yeah.
It speaks to how political affiliations can sometimes overshadow personal relationships.
And it highlights the power of political polarization to divide people who might otherwise have common ground.
Exactly. And it makes you think about what factors might contribute to those shifts in perspective.
He goes on to say that figures like Mike Wallace and Joe Scarborough used to spend a lot of time at Mar-a-Lago and seem to enjoy the Trump's company.
It's almost like we're watching a real-life political drama unfold, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
These characters who were once on friendly terms are now adversaries in this highly charged political landscape.
And that drama is playing out not just in the political arena, but also within the media itself.
Right. It's a constant battle for narrative control.
Yeah.
You know, different outlets and personalities are all competing for influence and credibility.
It's almost like a competition for hearts and minds with each side.
It is.
Trying to win over the public with their version of the truth.
Which brings us back to the importance of being discerning consumers of information.
Right.
We need to critically evaluate the sources we're relying on and be open to considering multiple perspectives.
It's so easy to fall into the trap of confirmation bias.
It is. It's human nature to gravitate towards information.
Right.
That makes us feel comfortable and validated.
Right.
But true intellectual growth requires us to step outside of our comfort zones.
We need to be open to ideas.
We do.
That might make us feel uncomfortable or even challenge our deeply held beliefs.
It's about being willing to question our own assumptions.
Right.
And recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
There's a lot of humility in that, isn't there?
There is.
Recognizing the limits of our own knowledge and understanding.
It's essential in a world where information is so abundant.
Yeah.
And so easily manipulated.
So we need to be skeptical, but not cynical.
Right.
Open-minded, but not gullible.
Yeah.
It's a delicate balance.
It is. And finding that balance is crucial for navigating this increasingly complex and often confusing media landscape.
So to bring this back to you, the listener, let's connect this conversation about media literacy back to the idea of these unexpected political alignments.
Great idea. What's fascinating here is that the changing media landscape itself might be a major factor driving these shifts in perspective. The rise of alternative platforms has given a voice to those who feel marginalized or misrepresented by traditional outlets.
And you mentioned earlier that these platforms operate outside the constraints of traditional journalistic norms.
They do.
Which can be both a good and a bad thing.
Exactly. On the one hand, you have greater diversity of viewpoints and more democratic access to information. But on the other, you have the potential for the spread of misinformation and conspiracy theories.
That's a tricky balance to strike more voices and perspectives.
It is.
Can be a good thing. But how do we ensure accuracy and responsible reporting?
That's the challenge. And it's why media literacy is more important now than ever before.
So this all ties back to the skills we were talking about earlier.
It does.
Critically evaluating information, recognizing bias, distinguishing fact from opinion.
Precisely. It's about being informed and engaged consumers of information, not just passively absorbing whatever is presented to us.
So what are some of the other factors that might be driving these unexpected political alignments?
Sure.
We've talked about changing media landscape, the rise of alternative platforms.
Well, there are a lot of factors at play, of course. Social and economic anxieties, cultural shifts, political polarization. But something else that's interesting to consider is this idea of disillusionment with traditional institutions. We touched on that a bit earlier.
Eric Trump seemed to be suggesting that people are losing trust. In institutions like the government, the media. Even academia.
Exactly. And that loss of trust can create a vacuum that alternative sources of information can fill.
It's like people are looking for something else. Something they feel they can believe in.
And they're finding it in these alternative media platforms and these charismatic figures who challenge the status quo.
So it's not just about information anymore. It's about something deeper, a sense of belonging. Perhaps.
It seems that way. People are craving connection, authenticity, a sense of community.
And these alternative media platforms are providing that.
In a way, yes, they offer a sense of belonging, a shared identity. And that can be very powerful, especially in a world that feels increasingly fragmented and uncertain.
I think this leads perfectly into our final point. The implications of all of this. What does this mean? For the future of media and politics?
That's a big question.
It is.
And I don't think anyone has all the answers. But it's clear that the media landscape is changing rapidly. And those changes are having a profound impact on our political realities.
We're seeing traditional power structures challenged. New voices are emerging. The lines between news, entertainment, and opinion
are blurring.
It's a complex and dynamic landscape. And navigating it requires a new set of skills. And a willingness to engage in critical thinking and open-minded dialogue.
So where do we go from here? What are the key takeaways for you, the listener?
I think one of the most important takeaways is that the media landscape is in a constant state of flux. What was true yesterday might not be true today. We have to be adaptable, flexible, and willing to learn and evolve as the landscape changes.
And we have to remember that all media is constructed. It's created by people with their own perspectives, biases, and agendas.
Exactly. We need to be aware of those influences and to critically evaluate the information we're consuming.
And I think it's also important to recognize that these changes in the media landscape are having a real impact on our politics, our culture.
Absolutely.
And even our personal relationships. Absolutely. We're seeing a fragmentation of shared realities. People are retreating into their own echo chambers. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to have meaningful conversations across different viewpoints.
That's concerning. So what can we do about it?
Well, I think it starts with individual responsibility. We each have a role to play in shaping a more informed and engaged public discourse.
And how do we do that?
By developing those media literacy skills we've been talking about. By engaging in respectful dialogue with people who hold different views. By being willing to challenge our own assumptions and biases.
That's great advice. So it's not about shutting down conversation or silencing venting voices.
It's about creating spaces where different perspectives can be heard and debated in a civil and constructive manner.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all part of this complex, an interconnected world, and that we need to work together to build a more informed, engaged, and empathetic society.
This has been a fascinating conversation.
It has.
I'm not sure we've answered all the questions.
We haven't.
But we've certainly raised some important ones.
I agree. And I think that's the beauty of a deep dive like this.
It is.
It's not about finding all the answers. No. It's about prompting more questions.
It is.
Deeper reflection and a greater awareness.
Absolutely.
Of the forces shaping our world.
And with that, I think we've reached the end of part 2.
We have. We've unpacked a lot of complex ideas.
We have.
And there's still much to consider.
Right. We've explored the rise of alternative media, the concept of a populist backlash, the importance of media literacy, and so much more.
But the conversation doesn't end here in part 3. We'll delve into some of the potential implications of these media shifts and what they might mean for the future of our political landscape. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From the rise of figures like Joe Rogan to the shifting political landscape.
It's pretty wild.
As we wrap things up, let's zoom out and consider the broader implications of these trends for you, the listener.
It's like we're watching these tectonic plates of media and politics shifting beneath our feet.
It is.
It's fascinating, but also a bit unsettling.
Absolutely, especially when you consider the potential consequences.
Yeah.
Eric Trump actually hints at one of those consequences when he talks about those who have left traditional media outlets.
Right. He suggests they're only now free to express their true opinions.
Exactly. It's a provocative claim.
It is. It makes you wonder if certain viewpoints are being suppressed or amplified depending on the media environment.
It speaks to this idea that there might be an unspoken set of rules or expectations within those traditional institutions.
And if those institutions are losing their influence, what does that mean for how we define truth? In a world of competing narratives.
That's a crucial question, I think, for the listener to consider.
It is.
With the rise of alternative media, we're seeing a fragmentation of shared realities.
Yeah, we are.
Is becoming harder and harder.
It is.
To distinguish.
It is.
Between fact and fiction.
Between legitimate news. And misinformation.
It's like we're all living in our own filter bubbles.
They are.
Surrounded by information that confirms our existing biases.
Yep.
How do we break out of those bubbles?
That's the question.
And engage in meaningful conversations across those divides?
I think that's where the skills that we've been discussing come. Media literacy, critical thinking, open-mindedness. Those are essential tools for navigating this new information landscape.
So it's not just about consuming information. It's about being active participants.
We have to be.
In shaping the narratives that define our world.
Absolutely. We need to be aware of the forces.
That are shaping our perceptions of reality. And to be proactive in seeking out diverse perspectives. And engaging in respectful dialogue.
This deep dive, I think, has given you, the listener, a lot to think about.
I think so.
We've explored the evolving media landscape, the rise of alternative platforms, and the potential for political realignment.
We've talked about the importance of media literacy and critical thinking in navigating this complex and ever-changing world.
This can have profound effects on individuals. Institutions and society as a whole.
They really can.
The way we consume information shapes our understanding of the world.
Shapes everything.
And that understanding influences our beliefs and actions.
It's a powerful cycle.
It is. So as you move forward, listener, consider this. If the media landscape continues to evolve in this direction, what role will you play?
In shaping the future of information and discourse.
Good question.
Will you be a passive consumer? Or an active participant?
Perspectives or retreat into your own echo chamber?
The choices you make
they do
have a real impact on the world around you.
So stay curious, stay engaged, and stay informed.
Such good advice. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.